Hi, everyone. It's 6:30, and I'm Dan McDowell with the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. I am the newly elected president, and I am honored to be here tonight for the program of Challenges to Journalism. And with us tonight, we have our four panelists that I will introduce here in just a moment. But before we do that, I'd like to take a moment to thank the Action Projects team for putting this together. I believe, I'm not sure if they're all here tonight. I know that Larry Abdullah, Janice Moran, Bonnie Ida, and I hope I didn't miss anybody else from that team that have put this together. But thank you very much, the Action Projects team, for putting that together, for putting this program together tonight. Um, my role tonight as moderator will just be pretty much making sure I see we have Christy back on with us. Great. All four panelists are here tonight. This program is being recorded, and those of you that have just joined us, you are on mute during the panel discussions, and then you'll be taken off of mute when we get into the Q&A portion of the meeting. If you've not participated in our program in the past, the way that we have it set up is our panelists will each have an allotted 15 minutes tonight, and there are four panelists. And after that, we'll open it up for the Q&A. And let's see. The next thing I want to do is introduce our board members that are on the call tonight from the Progressive Alliance. This is our new board that has just been elected for the next 2 years. And let's see, we have Karen Houston on with us, our vice president, and then Carol Becker, who is our treasurer, and Bonnie Ida, the secretary, and then the delegates, Barbara Bingner, there she is, and Janice Moran, and let's see, who else do we have? Any other board members? Not that I see. But we also have, I'm glad we have Vicky on with us tonight, Vicky and Poco. Great, our communications guru. So good to see you, Vicky. Tonight's program, Challenges to Journalism. And before we do that, I want to make sure that, this is our first Thursday program. And what we have found that we will be doing going forward is that due to limited resources, we're going to have to do them more on a quarterly basis. So we won't be able to quite do our programs like we've been doing in the past, but I want to kind of give you a heads up that stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. We'll keep you informed of when our next program will be coming up. I think Karen is our producer of that program. Karen, any comments about the program that we're going to have scheduled the next few months?
Okay, so it's going to be a program, and I'm going to be reaching out to some people, maybe some of you even, trying to give an understanding of a lot of the cuts to programs throughout new administration and how it will affect everyone in some way, shape, or form. Certain services like OSHA, labor relations, all these different programs, and how it'll trickle down and to even like the school lunch program, for children who can't afford full lunch. So I'm trying to make it a big program and help the community to understand what's coming up and to be prepared and understand that. So
excellent. Thank you, Karen. Anybody else from the board have any comments? Okay, before we go ahead and get started with the panel, we usually take 1 minute to allow for any announcements from the community. If you have an announcement, if you can either raise your hand digitally or kind of flag me down, or if anyone can help, if you see anybody out there. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and
Karen has one.
Karen? I'm sorry, Karen. I
That's
thought you were
okay.
just waving as an example. Okay,
That's all right. Uh, okay, so yes, Dan, we got a couple of things that's coming up. Once again, well, one of the things immediate in this area, and I don't know what they've come up with. We have some doctors and nurses in our Orlando Health Hospital. It used to be Woolstaff and Stewart all along. There's a big panel getting together. Well, actually, I don't know who all is getting together, but I know some doctors and nurses that are being involved in trying to get the message out in the community that this is not really a good move. Although everyone understands that the building needs repair or replacing, but the severity of what's going to happen to the 900 plus 940, I guess,
yes, 940.
employees, and also for those of us who are getting older, for anybody who's had a traumatic accident or whatever, there's going to be a longer distance for them to go and get immediate help. So if you have a condition that requires 5 minutes to get to somewhere, that's going to, it could be traumatic for someone. So something is coming out. You can go to save-rockledge.hospital.org and click on their site and see if you can. It would be wonderful if everybody could send something, call their legislators, or show your support by signing the petition. Also, you know that our new administration is trying to dismantle the Postal Service. So the postal workers in this area is going to have on March 23rd a rally in front of the Melbourne Post Office, 640 East New Haven Avenue. It's March 23rd from 1 to 4. So if you're interested, we'd appreciate if anybody and everybody would show up for this rally. So.
Great. Thank you, Karen, our vice president. And I believe somebody had put in the chat the Save the Rockledge Hospital link. So thank you for that. And does our treasurer have a report or a plead for membership or anything of that sort, or anything they would like to add?
Yeah, I can just say that they can go to our website. What do we got? I can't even think of it right now. Somebody,
SCPA Florida.
what is it?
SCPAFlorida.com.
Yeah, that's right. scpaflorida.com. You can pay with a credit card on the website. You can also mail us a check. The address is on there. And it's $35 for a family membership, $25 for an individual membership, and $10 for students. So we'd certainly like to have you join. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Treasurer. Well, I will, again, I am Dan McDowell, and I am the president of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, and I will be your host for today's presentation. And we have 4 panelists that have joined us tonight that are going to speak. I'll be doing introductions of the 4 panelists as they come up. We'll start with Mara, and then Beth, and then Terry, and then Christy Boo will wrap it up. They will, for the folks that have joined us, you're on mute, and when we get to the point of the Q&A, you'll come off of mute and have the ability to ask some questions of our panelists. Our panelists will also be asked to have a couple action items that you'd like to share with us to take away from this session today. So thank you again. And before I introduce Mara, we all know this rapid rise in disinformation that has distorted our news and led to a fractured public space. And, reporters and TV anchors have lost their jobs for telling the truth and suffered threats to themselves and their families. We have this outstanding panel tonight from print journalism, broadcast journalism, and social media, who will share their perspectives and to help us make sense of it all. So that's your task for tonight. I am looking forward to it. So I'll start with our first speaker, Mara Bellaby, executive editor at Florida Today. She's been with Florida Today since 2007 in a variety of roles, and then named the top editor in in 2019. She leads a team of editors, reporters, photographers, multimedia specialists, and the reach of Florida Today is 1.2 million each month. Prior to joining Florida Today, Mara worked as a journalist with Associated Press in London, Moscow, and Kyiv. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. And lived here, and she lives here with her family in Merritt Island. So please join me in welcoming Mara Bellaby.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm from right in O'Galley. This is where our newsroom is now. So it's kind of noisy outside. So hopefully, hopefully you can hear me okay. But it's an honor to be here. Yeah, as Dan said, I've been at Florida Today now for quite a while, had a variety of roles, and have been in the top editor's job for about 6 years. And, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is, we're local journalists. We cover Brevard County, we cover the community. So we live here, we work here, we shop here, dine out here, send our kids to schools here. We're very much a part of Brevard County. But even before I kind of get started on like the truth, the media and democracy and what the challenges are, I think I like to kind of share with you some of the context that at least I bring to my role. And I think my time working overseas played just a significant part in how I view journalism. When I was in Moscow, it was right as Putin was cementing his power. But when I first got there, it was a really robust media atmosphere. It was chaotic, but there was a lot of really cutting satire and criticism, and journalists could ask any questions that they had. But very quickly that changed. And so that was some of the reporting that I did, as we saw, TV stations lose their licenses, as we saw newspapers shut down, journalists face threats, including in a few cases, they were murdered. And so that was very eye-opening for me to see that as a younger journalist, and to just be exposed to how quickly that change happened. So I think just, I've certainly brought that experience, that context to bear. And that's something that I reflect on and think about as I just think about the future of journalism. Now, locally, I feel very fortunate. But even, one of the things that I think it is important to state, throughout my career, and I've been a journalist my entire career, I have never done anything else. So it's all I know. I have never had anyone dictate to me what I could or couldn't write. That has never happened. And, I worked with the Associated Press. I've been with Gannett at 2 different papers. So that, that's just not a reality, that it just didn't happen, has never happened. And so sometimes when you hear, it's, commonly said, like, there's this narrative and there are talking points in this, that it just doesn't, it's just not real. At least that was never my experience in 2 very different organizations. But certainly there are challenges, and there are challenges locally. And when I think about them, I think about 5 in particular. And what we see locally, you see nationally as well, but I'm going to talk local because I'm a local journalist. And the first is that kind of the perception of 2 different realities, and that we don't all agree on the same facts. And that's challenging. It's challenging to combat. It's one thing to have different opinions on things, to disagree about it, to feel differently, but when you can't you can't agree to one set of facts, that it becomes, it's just very hard. It's a very hard environment. And I get a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls from readers who will hear things or see things on social media or on, another medium, and call up, and they're, just convinced that we're hiding something, we're twisting something, we're whatever. And, once we usually engage in a conversation, it ends with them understanding, why we reported as we did, where it's coming from. but you can't do that one-on-one with everybody. And so I think that's just a big danger that that it's sort of become this within our culture, within our society right now, just these two competing realities. And so one of the things as journalists that we try to do, we don't always succeed, but we really try to provide as many like links, documentation, like this is where it's coming from. We don't use unnamed sources, or we try very hard not to, unless the person has a very deep personal fear of their safety. And if we do use an unnamed source, I mean, I need to know exactly who that person is and why my boss needs to know that. But we really try not to. We want to give readers everything that we are using to write that report. And so that's, every day I'm having conversations with reporters on, what documentation do we have? What can we get? What have you seen? Who else have you talked to? And I think that's really important. And I think that's just if there's an action point as you read things and consume things, if it's only kind of one source or unnamed sources, or, not offering that information, I mean, why isn't it? Where is that? That's so critical. I mean, the other thing that I think is a challenge is the kind of journalists as enemies. And that's something that particularly, I mean, we saw it get a lot worse during the pandemic I don't know if it was the isolation of the pandemic and everything, but as I think society sort of fractured into competing viewpoints after that, we really, that's when it really kind of hit home even locally. And if we would write stories about people suffering from COVID-19 and, post them online, sometimes just there would be endless personal attacks on our reporters who wrote those stories. And, that's hard. That's hard as we have some young reporters, but even older and experienced reporters, it's hard to face that onslaught. We also sometimes see it on, some space stories. If there's a lot of fans of SpaceX and Elon Musk, and if there's stories that raise questions or criticism, sometimes you can see that it just unleashes this kind of torrent of complaints, and that can get very personal. I mean, complaints and criticism is fine, and that's one thing, but it can kind of turn personal fast. And I think that is something that definitely worries me, that, journalists as enemies. So that's why we try. I mean, that's why I thank you for this opportunity. And that's why I try to take every opportunity that I am able to get to talk to people, to let them, see I'm a real person. I mean, that's one of the things that often when people write me, very scathing emails, I try to respond to everybody. I don't have 100% success rate there, but I try. And I'm always, very often it's like, oh my gosh, you wrote back to me, like you're real, almost. And I think, that's the thing that we're fighting against, is it's very easy to think that, you're an enemy if they don't know you. So one of my kind of talking points is that, we do live here, and my kids, go to school. My son goes to school here. We have, we're part of this community. We care about this community. We're not the enemy. And that comes too when we're talking and dealing with, politicians or anything that's a difficult or challenging story. I mean, our job is to ask the questions, and to try to get as close to the truth, to try to figure out what happened. And I think it's, I always tell them when they complain, like your questions were hostile. I mean, our goal is not to be hostile. We want to be respectful. We want to do that, but we want to put the questions to them because we want to give them an opportunity to respond, to explain. I mean, sometimes there's just misunderstanding out there, and, that no one is served if you make assumptions or you kind of pull your punches. So we will, ask those questions, but it's done from a point of view of trying to get the information, the accurate information out there. One of the other things that definitely is a challenge for us is, particularly some politicians, some groups deciding that they just don't want to deal with the media. They don't want to talk to the media. Our sheriff's department sometimes answers some questions, but prefers to do kind of taped videos, and put those out. and we're, grateful for the information, but it takes away that opportunity to ask questions, to engage in that back and forth. And so I think that as different groups decide, I'm not going to engage with the media, that hurts. That hurts our ability to get the full story, to get all the information, and quite frankly, it hurts them too in putting their messaging out, and explaining why they've done something, or why they are acting in a certain way, or making the decision that they did. But we do see that more. I mean, we, around elections, we host panels and invite the candidates, and sometimes there's a certain, group of candidates who just don't want to come. So you have a panel where you hope to have all the challengers, and instead you just have one person. I mean, that's a shame, and so we try a lot of outreach, we try to encourage, but it doesn't always work. And so I think, that's where I see a challenge going forward of how to get around that. I don't have an answer to this one, but we just keep asking. And there's some groups that we know are never going to respond to us, but we're always going to ask. We're always going to give them that opportunity. And when they don't, we write about it. We put it in the story. Sometimes I've written about it. We think the public has a right to know, especially if they're elected officials or public officials, that they're not being responsive at all. The other kind of challenge I would say that we see is kind of I would say a chilling effect. And I would say it's not on journalists, because again, I've never had anyone dictate to me what I could or couldn't write. We don't make decisions that way. But on sources, sources get nervous, and especially as we're trying to report locally on some of the changes, significant changes happening, coming from Washington, federal government changes. People don't want to put themselves out there, and I get it. I mean, what NASA employee wants to be quoted and have their name out if they're, afraid of losing their job, or a university professor, or even university presidents. I mean, it's a hard time to put yourself out there. And I think that's something, that we're constantly up against. And particularly even, we've been doing some stories, or starting to do more reporting on some of the effort to get illegal immigrants out of the country. And again, talking to people, and there's some very moving stories, but I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night putting people's names and things in the paper where they're immediately a target. So, that goes against our ultimate goal of like total transparency, and everybody, and all as much information as we can. And so that's something that we're discussing among ourselves on how do we handle that? What's the best way? So those are just those constant discussions. And, and we're kind of taking sometimes different approaches on different situations. And then I would say, one of the things that definitely is a concern, and this is more internal, is, we're smaller. In the time I've been at Florida Today, we have gone from dozens and dozens of reporters to, now under 20. So it's we used to have people covering every town in Brevard County. Now we have basically 2 people who kind of encompass the entire county, and a lot of their focus is on the county government. So it doesn't leave a lot of time to really watch what is happening in all of our towns and cities. That's a challenge. I mean, that's hard. And part of the industry, of course, part of our survival is more eyeballs, and we're lucky. We do have big audiences, and a lot that drives that is space. But we also, do trending stories. We do food and dining, and I'm proud of that. I think communities want that breadth of stuff, but sometimes, there's sometimes moments of frustration as you look and you see that your most popular stories are the new restaurant, and when's the lunch, and when, like, sort of those answering those questions, and those are important, and those are service, but they're not the pieces that recount what happened at Palm Bay City Council meeting, or what's going on behind the scenes in Cape Canaveral. And so that is, that's something that has changed, and our ability to cover everything has changed. So we have to prioritize more than ever. And there's some things that we have to pass up that I wish we didn't. Um, we have a grant funded reporting position that focuses on mental health, and that's a new thing for us. And that is exciting because it lets us tap into an area that we know the need is great, but that otherwise we just frankly wouldn't be able to cover. So we look for opportunities like that, but it's definitely, there's a lot of, there's a lot of challenges out there, but
One moment. 1 minute.
1 minute. Oh my God, I didn't realize I talked so long. But I continue to be just very, very bullish about journalism and its importance and the importance of independent journalism. So again, I just, appreciate you having me here. I'm happy to later answer any questions and, just keep being attentive and keep watching and keep reading. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mara Bellaby, Executive Editor for the Florida Today. And for those of you that just joined us, we will be doing, I'm Dan McDowell, I'm your host for tonight, and we will be doing a Q&A after our 4 panelists have had their chance to speak. So with that said, I want to say a personal thank you. As a former politician, I have to tell you that I enjoyed my interactions with the paper. So good job. Keep up the great work. Our next panelist is Beth Kassab, editor of the Winter Park Voice. Beth arrived at the Voice in 2023 with a strong passion for telling the stories of people and organizations that help shape this region. A native Floridian of Central Florida, she worked at Orlando Sentinel for almost 20 years, where she covered a wide range of areas, including politics, education, courts, business, and local government. She's nationally recognized for her work, and she has appeared on, CNN, MSNBC, NBC Nightly News. So please join me in welcoming Beth Kassab.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everyone for the invitation to be here tonight. Like Maura said, I agree with so much of what she said. It really echoes so many of the experiences I've had during my career here in Central Florida. I try to appear at any events like this that I possibly can, because I think part of my job as a local journalist who lives in our community is to help demystify the work we do and explain it and give people a better understanding of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and also get some ideas from them about what we could do differently or better. So I have to say, if I was invited by the Conservative Alliance, I would be there too. My political persuasions do not impact the work I do. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but it's the absolute truth. If you talk to journalists, they take very seriously their role of doing the best we possibly can to give you the straight story. That, we're not robots. We're humans. We have feelings. We make mistakes. And I guess I see my role at the Winter Park Voice as helping folks try to understand that. The Voice is an interesting venture because it really has grown out of this landscape that we're in right now that is just ever changing and evolving. I know I'm a little farther afield than some of the other panelists, so I'll just give you a very quick rundown about The Voice. We're here in Winter Park, which is, of course, right. Many of you probably know Winter Park. We're right outside of Orlando, actually borders the city of Orlando. And about 12, 13 years ago, a group of really engaged people there decided, hey, nobody is really covering our city. And there were some political issues going on at the time that they felt were being done in City Hall or elsewhere in the city. And they didn't think residents had access to the information. So they did something that was kind of radical at the time. And they said, hey, we'll just put some money together and start a small website. And that's exactly what they did. And it's been through 2 editors. I believe I'm now the 3rd editor. And since I came on, I've really worked to professionalize the site. We officially became a nonprofit. We joined the Institute for Nonprofit News, and we've started participating in a lot of their programming and adhering to a lot of the best practice standards that they set for journalists across the country. It's not unusual now to see a number of nonprofits popping up, especially hyper locals like the Winter Park Voice that focus in on just maybe one area or region. Like Maura said, I mean, I identify with that so much in our regional newsrooms. They're just being depleted, and I still subscribe and cheer them on because the people there are amazing. I know people at Florida Today. Of course, I know a lot of people still at the Sentinel, and the work is absolutely critical. But when I started at the Orlando Sentinel 20 years, almost 25 years ago now, there were 300 people in my newsroom. And those 300 people were spread out from Kissimmee. We had bureaus in Osceola County all the way up to Daytona Beach and Brevard. We used to fight like enemies with Florida Today, especially over space news. So, boy, what a luxury that was to have such a vibrant, competitive environment at that time. And it really forced us all to be better. Now the Sentinel, they're down to, I want to say probably, don't hold me to this. If anybody wants to correct me, if you know better, that's great. I believe it's probably a couple dozen reporters. I mean, huge difference. So as Maura said, they are just not able to cover the individual towns and counties like we used to. And that's really, really important to understand that, because there are decisions being made all over the state of Florida, especially right here in Central Florida. Lots of money being spent, lots of taxpayer funds going to things, and there's just really no oversight. Of course, people elect local officials, but if they don't really know what they're doing in the role, it's hard to exercise any oversight at the polls too. And it's really hard for citizens to go in and exercise that kind of oversight themselves. That's why traditionally the people who do that work get paid for it, because it's a lot of work. A lot of time invested in getting to know people, sourcing, and spending time at City Hall and going to all of these meetings in neighborhoods and finding out what's really going on. So it's not something that most citizens can really do on their own. And so we feel like while we're a very tiny little operation, we do our best to at least provide some news that otherwise wouldn't exist and give people a little bit of insight about municipal elections and county elections, and of course, what's going on in City Hall and around the city. There's a lot of concerns right now. I want to get to one of the things I think this group was interested in, which is this idea that there are almost like 2 sets of facts out in the world. And I find that I encounter that pretty much every day. One way I've kind of decided to try to deal with this is to engage as much as I can with readers through the comment boards on our website. We post a story, and the Winter Park Voice is free. It's basically like an NPR model. We love it when people send in contributions, but it's not subscriber based. So the content is free, and you can go on and read the stories, and people are allowed to comment on the stories. I do moderate the comments. And if they're just completely unfactual or mean-spirited or violate our other standards, I just simply do not allow those comments to be posted. A lot can be on the bubble. And I want to exercise as much leeway as possible with people because I want them to be engaged. And I think the more they read and the more they're engaged, the better off we are. So sometimes, I will post their comment, but also correct certain things in it or explain our process. And I was joking around on social media today that that I might change the motto of the Winter Park Voice to "Come for the news, stay for the comments," because I have so many people tell me they get out their popcorn whenever the comment boards get flowing. So yeah, I mean, obviously this is just work I believe in wholeheartedly, without sites like the panelists you have here, you wouldn't know who is funding your candidates for local office. Nobody would perhaps be combing through those financial reports or making sense of them. And I still think there's a lot of validity to having a third party do that. That's not a political party or politically motivated. My experience also, and I know some folks don't believe this, but I will echo Maura and all my time at the Orlando Sentinel, at my time in other internships during college, and of course now, I have never had somebody spike a story and say it can't be written because they didn't like it, or censor stories in any way. My work, this is another thing I think a lot of people don't understand. I think a lot of folks think that reporters are out there writing stories that their editors assign to them. And sometimes that might be true because things like that will come up. But for most of my career, I was out there on a beat, mining that beat myself. And if I didn't come up with a story or somebody didn't pitch it to me out in the field, that story didn't get written. My editors were managing 8 or 10 people. They did not have the time to assign stories on a daily basis on all these different beats. That just wasn't the way it's done. It's a very self-driven field, and I don't think a lot of folks realize that. So I will say, this idea that there's some conspiracy in the media to not write about certain things, I mean, it just could not be farther from the truth. I think what the media encounters and does deserve criticism for is their logistical disaster of just not having enough resources. Previous generations of editors simply did not seem to understand the level of disruption that the internet would bring, or plan for that, make sure that our work was copyrighted in a way that Google couldn't give it away for free. So while the search engines and other big tech is making a bundle, it's because they're selling our facts, our work that we go out and find. So, and that's what's coming up on search. So there's a lot of criticism for the industry for sure, but I have a lot of faith in the nonprofit model that I'm personally experimenting with right now. Thankful to have a small board who's given me the leeway to do that and to push forward. And we're doing a small site, it's not perfect, on a 5-figure budget. Now, I'm trying to make that sustainable for years to come, but that's our starting point. And I think it's, a testament to what can be done when there's a will for it in the community. Because like I said, this is all community funded. I do think that the political environment on the national level has certainly bled into what we're seeing state and locally. It's just so much angrier and detached from reality in some cases than what I've seen in the past. The things people will get up to the microphone at public meetings and say with such confidence while having very little grounding, if any, in truth is wild to me. But it happens every public meeting. And there's just, I just see a lot of anger, people in fear that they're being lied to. And of course, I've spent my life covering local government, and there is corruption at times. There have been stories where we've had to really shine a light on things that were going on that shouldn't have been going on. But by and large, local governments, the folks who work in local governments are just trying to make an honest living, just like journalists are just trying to make an honest living. And they really are, trying to fulfill their obligation to the community. It's not necessarily, a piggy bank rife with all kinds of crimes, we look for that, and and there's certainly examples of it. But the idea that that's the baseline is not correct. But that doesn't mean, we don't cover it. We still need to know. It doesn't mean that things can't be improved upon, or that some of the decisions they're making just might not be what the will of the voters would be. So, but I guess, like I said, there's just a disconnect and a level of anger that I think has definitely changed and intensified in the time that I've been doing this. And I think the solution is honestly to just keep going. I think we need more people willing to do the work. We need more people willing to fund the work. We need more people willing to share solid journalism and not fringe things. We need people willing to tell their neighbor, hey, did you read this? And share the work on social, or share it in your private family text threads or whatever you have. I just think we have to keep going. We are, I think we know what the right thing to do is, and we just have to keep executing, even though the environment has become bleaker and bleaker.
Thank you, Beth.
I was going to say, Beth, I think Bonnie was having some audio issues, but I think she was signaling you had 1 minute. Is that right, Bonnie?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So, but I am happy to answer any questions folks might have. And again, I just really appreciate you guys doing this and having an interest in this topic. It's really important.
Well, that was Beth Kassab, the editor of the Winter Park Voice. Thank you, Beth. And for those of you who have just joined us, I'm Dan McDowell. I'm hosting the program for Space Coast Progressive Alliance tonight, and Challenges to Journalism. And we have heard from our first two panelists. And as a reminder, we will have a Q&A after our last two panelists speak. And also keep in mind, we like those takeaways, those action steps. So keep that in mind, panelists, that what you'd like us to do as a community. With that said, thank you again, Beth. And do we have Terry Wright? Terry Wright, I was thinking of Terry Wright with Coastal Connections. I can hear it. This is Terry Wright, Coastal Connections. She's the Community Outreach Director for WFIT-FM radio at Florida Tech. WFIT is the only locally owned and operated public radio station in Brevard, and is authorized agent to broadcast National Public Radio, NPR. Terry held the position of general manager for nearly a quarter of a century. She facilitates interviews, public service announcements, business partnerships. She's a member and a representative of the Florida Public Broadcasting. She lives with her family in Malabar. So please join us tonight in welcoming Terry Wright.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to discredit myself in saying that I'm not a reporter, unlike our two previous speakers. WFIT has a very small staff. We don't have a news department. We pretty much borrow our news, or hopefully you don't think we steal it, but we have an agreement with Florida Today that we can use their content. We also have a network of 13 public radio stations across Florida, and we share stories that way. So that's pretty much how we do our local news. I do Coastal Connection and Inside Florida Tech. It's just a short 4-minute feature where I have an opportunity to interview amazing people that are doing great things in our community. Space Coast Progressive Alliance is always one of my interviewees, but I've had the wonderful opportunity of talking to people that are giving their heart and soul in our community and making a difference and changing, whether it's the Indian River Lagoon or the Space Center or education. That's all available through Coastal Connection. So that's really the news part, I guess, that I would share with you. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the national level and how we get our news, how much it has changed. Things are so different. You know, before you would get the newspaper at night or you'd watch the 6 o'clock news, but now we're just bombarded with information, whether it's true or not. It's there in your feeds. It's there every time you open your computer. You don't necessarily have the time to go and vet it out and make sure that it's true and it's correct and factual. And another sad thing is that the state of affairs, thanks to our current leadership, is just that lies, out and out lies, are just either taken for fact or just overlooked completely. And I think that's really frightening. I did want to talk a little bit about NPR because that's our main news source. NPR is the most expensive invoice, the most expensive item that WFIT has to pay every year. And I know that it's worth it because they have reporters in the field, they have interpreters, they send people all across the globe. They have travel expenses, they have editing expenses, communication expenses, and they really vet their stories. We have had the opportunity to have a couple of our stories shared nationally. And Rick Glasby, who was our reporter at the time, it was like a 2-minute story, and they made him write it, rewrite it, source, tell them his sources, and then record it and then re-record it. And that was all for just 2 minutes. So you can imagine what they go through for their 10-minute and 15-minute stories. NPR is kind of under the microscope right now, as you might have heard. The National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting have been called to Congress to speak, I guess, and justify what they do. There's been numerous talk of cutting funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the money for NPR and PBS. Now, that being said, NPR only receives 1% of its budget from the federal government. The rest of it comes from individual stations like WFIT and MFE and all the local stations. PBS, however, and television is so much more expensive to produce than radio. They get 16% of their budget covered by the federal government. So they really are vulnerable, I guess. And they're really having to watch what they say and what they report. And that's frightening in itself because, I mean, you talk about, okay, well, and in NPR, you'll often hear NPR or Facebook is a sponsor of NPR. They're accountable to their sponsors, but they reveal that, well, when the federal government comes in, and like today, there was a story about how the universities are cutting their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs because of federal funding, and they don't know, what kind of an effect that's going to have. There's also been talk of bills being put forth where if the Corporation for Public Broadcasting still funds the individual stations like WFIT, there would be a bill that said that we can't pay for any of the programming like Morning Edition, All Things Considered, the NPR programming. We can't pay for that with any federal money. So it's a really scary time right now when you think about all the information that's out there, how much of it is true, how much of it is not true. And it does, as our two previous editors have spoken, it does take a lot of time and energy and money to be able to vet these sources and find out that what you're hearing or what you're repeating or what you're sharing on your feed, whether it's true or not. So in this day and age, to give you an action item, I would just say my best thing is to support the local newspapers, support local journalism, and of course support WFIT. But I would encourage you also to reach out, because when you have something of interest, maybe you work for a local nonprofit or you're involved with a local nonprofit, reach out to us, because that's what we're there for. We really do want to be able to communicate with the community the great things that are happening here. It is a wonderful place to live, and we do have wonderful resources and wonderful people. So I know my time is short, but I will be happy to answer any questions at the end. And I do want to thank you very much for asking me to join this panel.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. Great job. The fourth panel, as she's taking a swig out of her bottle there, is Christy Boo, social media youth activist, who's passionate about working to uplift the community. She works both with local and national organizations that align with her values for inclusivity and democracy for all. Christy has helped plan countless rallies. I can attest to that because I've been on those rallies with her, protest, marches, sign waving, many different events. She helps with local political campaigns, much, much more. Speaking has always allowed her to bring her visibility to important causes while also engaging in the community. So please join me in welcoming Christy Boo. You need to take yourself off of mute there. There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. One more time. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Dan.
You're welcome.
So I have a lot of my action items in my speech. I went ahead and just wrote down exactly what I want to say. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that now. Okay. Hello, my name is Christy, and I'm a local activist who is very passionate about working in my community. Firstly, I would like to thank Bonnie for asking me to be a part of this amazing panel today, and to the Space Coast Progressive Alliance for everything that they do in the community and for including me in this event. I started becoming much more active in my community after the fall of Roe v. Wade. I have always been the outspoken advocate and the woman with a lot to say. So after I felt the shock and loss of Roe v. Wade being overturned is when I felt a very strong call to action. Since then, I have met the most amazing people who have taken me under their wings and mentored me, giving me the opportunity and the honor of working with my community in many impactful ways. Being a speaker has been one of my most powerful and impactful forms of communication and reaching out to others. When I prepare a speech, researching, fact-checking, and presenting important information in a meaningful way is crucial for spreading my message. My goal is to connect with, educate, and empower people with my speeches, giving a much-needed voice to these causes. Visibility is key in uniting the community and helping to incite change where it is needed. Visibility gives hope and empowers those who thought that they were alone. Being seen and recognized can foster a sense of belonging and possibility. I always tell my friends and family that if I was able to reach out to just one person with my efforts, then it was all worth it. That's what we do. That's why we do what we do. to spread hope, humanity, and love, to show others that they are not alone in this fight and that they have allies that are fighting for them. Being out in the community, participating in rallies, marches, sign waves, and more helps us to stay visible and to spread awareness. Working closely with groups like Awake Brevard that take visibility and community engagement seriously, I have been able to stay connected in my community and provide that visibility. And because of that, I've met so many people who have reached out to me and told me that a speech that I presented, a sign that I was holding, a march that I was in, or a volunteer effort that I was a part of has touched them on a personal level. Being on the ground and putting my heart into what I do in the community has enabled me to meet many beautiful souls. And knowing that I have made a meaningful impact on someone's is one of the most rewarding parts of what I do. I have hugged, cried, and connected with so many wonderful souls, and I have also had the honor of hearing their stories. While participating in these events, reaching out to new people. While participating in these events, reaching out to new people, starting conversations, creating connections, and networking are all vital tools. Make a goal to meet a new person at your next gathering. Don't be scared to ask questions, reach out, and become more involved. Asking others about your local chapters and how to become more involved, even in small ways, such as following their social media pages, can make a world of difference when it comes to staying connected. Attending your local chapter meetings, reading the literature that those chapters provide, attending your local school board meetings, city hall meetings, and other community gatherings are all examples of what we can do to further educate ourselves. If you are not able to attend these sessions, oftentimes you can tune in and watch them at home on your own time. Whatever works for you, we can all strive in our own small ways to stay informed about what's going on in our community. The power of social media is also a very important tool to help keep others engaged and informed. Utilizing social media to spread information about upcoming events and important information is essential. Social media helps us to organize and engage people to take action and to reach out and educate a large audience of people. When we are hosting an event, we want to reach out to as many people as possible to help mobilize our causes. Because of those efforts, I have met many women who have traveled for hours to attend our events because they were able to find the details online. These same women have approached me and asked how they could do the same thing in their own communities. I was able to exchange information with them and, with the help of my mentor, guide these women to create local events in their own communities. It's a beautiful thing to see how many people have been positively impacted by these efforts. Posting content online also inspires others, and it spreads awareness and visibility far and wide. When we go online for our personal use, it is extremely important that we are ensuring that the news sources that we gather our information from is properly sourced and fact-checked. And because of the endless stream of constant information that the internet provides, oftentimes it's easy to become confused about what to believe, especially with circular media methods and pages online that share their opinions disguised as facts. That's why it's so important to make sure that we are fact-checking everything that we share. Sometimes it's easy to automatically believe something that a friend posted online, but it is our duty to be diligent. I also make sure that I take the time to find the origin of a story, oftentimes by watching the original video that several news sites are reporting on, so that I can listen for myself and see the original content. Some things can be taken out of context, lost in translation, or partially reported on. Also, whenever I am researching a topic or reading the news, I do not randomly click on an article. I always choose a trusted news source. I check the date of the article. I read the entire article and not just the headline. I read multiple articles on the same topic, and I check the credibility of the authors and the sources that were used to report on that article. I always scroll down to the bottom of the page to check all statistics and to see what sources are cited for the information in the article. Always check the credentials of the author and the news source. Always understand the difference between entertainment, opinion, and fact-based reporting. I follow a number of different news sources, from independent journalists, social media reporters, local news outlets, and major media organizations. It's important to make sure that we are researching several sources from many sides to have a full understanding of what's happening around us. Sometimes I also take the time to read through bills and laws that are being passed. You can even set up alerts to receive notifications when new laws are passed by Congress and the Florida Senate. You can track bills for updates and understand the broader context of the legislation. You can also browse the congressional website by date to see legislation introduced, reported, passed, and considered by the full House or Senate each day. It is also important to check the proper channels and official government websites to read up on information directly so that there is no confusion about exactly what is happening. Keeping ourselves and our community up to date with these bills and laws helps us to stay informed. With the internet, we truly do have a world of information at our fingertips. Learning how to properly navigate and utilize that information is a very powerful skill to have. Practicing these important rules online will make a world of difference in the fight to combat misinformation, to keep ourselves properly informed, and to ensure that we are sharing the proper information. We can also make a difference by starting open conversations about finding the proper evidence and explaining why a source is unqualified to anyone who might be confused with false media. Patiently providing a detailed fact check and continuing to calmly explain the differences between a legitimate source versus an opinion is a great start. Studies have shown that people tend to believe information that they feel connected to emotionally, so the way that we present our information is extremely important. The goal is to educate, enlighten, lead, and inform. Education is also absolutely essential in moving forward for the betterment of our society and to fight against misinformation. Education can help with misinformation by teaching others media literacy and critical thinking skills. Supporting our local libraries and book distribution initiatives is another way to help educate and uplift our community. Education is power, and staying informed through doing the proper research and fact-checking is vital in ensuring that the truth prevails in our communities. Sadly, our own president and his administration has waged a war on fact-checking and refuses to answer follow-up questions and interviews. Fact-checking and follow-up questions are at the core of what journalists are meant to do, and to expect a journalist to do anything less than their duty is a disgraceful disservice, and it sets a very dangerous precedent for our democracy. A war has also been waged on books, education, equality, and anything that this administration believes might go against their extreme and narrow-minded views. While actively refusing to acknowledge the proven facts and truths presented to them, this administration has continued to rely on fear-mongering, propaganda, and spreading misinformation. These tactics have been used to create a culture of confusion, distrust, fear, and ignorance, which continues to create division and fuel chaos in this country. When people are afraid and have been made to feel that they can't trust anyone or anything besides a singular voice that they believe reigns supreme above all reason, that's when we are at risk of a fascist regime rising. All of this misinformation is being used as a tool of mass destruction, and that destruction continues to aid in the corrupt political agendas of those who are causing the confusion and the conflict in the first place. Instead of promoting peace, equality, and critical thinking skills, they have continued to shamelessly promote a culture of violence, hatred, and ignorance. Misinformation and disinformation is a threat to our democracy. It divides communities, makes it harder for people to make informed decisions, and it works against everyone's best interests. But our voices of truth, unity, justice, and equality are powerful. We have each other, our values, our country, and our rights to protect. I implore everyone to find the facts. Do your own research and learn from credible sources. Let's all work together to truly understand these causes and to spread the proper information to help make our world a better place for change and unity. As journalists and local activists, our only agenda is to speak and publish the truth so that everyone can be an informed participant in this democracy. At its core, a journalist's job is to gather information, to search for the truth, and to present that information in a meaningful way to help educate and inform others. It is our duty. And to try and silence us goes against our fundamental human rights to free speech and free press. Even though we face the challenges of being bullied by loudmouth hate groups that attempt to silence us, we continue to persevere in the pursuit of truth and our oath of fighting for justice. We will not be bullied or swayed. We will continue to fight for freedom and democracy for all. We are all here to stand for the truth in our media, to promote evidence-based practices, and to properly present the information that our public deserves. We will continue to stand for truthfulness, accuracy, fact-based communication, objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and respect for others. I believe that even the smallest act of kindness and compassion can make big changes in the world around us. So let's be the change that we want to see in our world, with one small act of kindness at a time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christy. And thank you all of the panelists for taking time out and giving us sharing your views. I have asked Phil to lead us off, Stasek, who is our one of our past presidents and who has been a moderator of this program for several years now. And Phil, if you could take yourself off of mute, and I'm going to let you kind of ask the first questions.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'll tell you what, what a fantastic panel. I think it's appropriate for everybody. I had to drop off a little bit earlier, but I tell you what, I listened to every one of you. We've been so lucky to have fantastic people on our panels over the years. And tonight we've got 4 fantastic people, and they all deserve a standing ovation from everybody that's here. I'm telling you guys, we appreciate your being here. Frankly, we appreciate everybody, the audience appreciates what you do, what each of you do in your specific field. But overall, the power of journalism, let's call it the fourth estate, as our founding fathers valued the importance of journalism. And they understood that not everybody agrees on everything. Not everybody sees the world in the same way. Throughout the history of our country, we've had newspapers that were really, really good and newspapers that were really, really bad, and people that led newspapers that did good things and people that led newspapers that did really bad things. You know, we've all seen this over the years, but overall, in balance, it is so important, as Christy was just saying, to speak the truth as you see it. One thing I wanted to say right off the bat, I threw it into the chat, and that is our previous executive editor from Florida Today wrote a book, and the book is called, of all things, is called The Truth. Bob Gabordi, our beloved former executive editor from Florida Today, wrote this book. Not a big book, easy to read, tells the story of his life in small town journalism and why it's so important. And I encourage all of you to look that up. If you don't have a copy of it yet, go buy it. Spend a couple bucks and support Bob's family. It's a great book, interesting read, tells a little bit about what it is to be a small town journalist, and I highly recommend it. And Daniel, I don't want to step on your privileges to basically call on people. One thing we like having people do the Q&A is very, very important. We ask that you please ask a question. We really don't necessarily need people to jump up and to make speeches like I just did, but of course people like to do that. But the idea is we have 4 people. We have a limited amount of time to ask them what their thoughts are. I'm going to ask each of the 4 panelists right off the bat, do you have a favorite book about journalism that you would like to refer us to? Something that, not necessarily this one, I mean a book that affected you, something that helped you as you were coming up through the ranks and learning the game and maybe in school. Please share with the rest of us where we could go find a good book to learn more about journalism, the importance of journalism.
Okay, so my answer for that one is actually a book that I just recently read. I Am Malala. Okay, and so she is just an absolute inspiration in her fight for the truth. And in that book, it really discusses exactly how a singular hateful voice or several hateful voices can infect and impact entire communities at large. how fear can spread and the damage it can cause, misinformation and the fear mongering and just all of the nonsense. She saw firsthand what had happened.
And for those on the call today, who is she?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead.
Just briefly. That's the individual that was shot, correct? That in Pakistan,
Yes.
I believe. Yes.
Yes, she is. I am just talking like I am assuming that everybody knows who she is. She is a Pakistani education activist, and she has written her own book. She's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate who advocates for education and equality for all. As a teenager, she spoke out against the Taliban's ban on girls going to school. The Taliban had a ban on girls' education, and she spoke out. She spoke up, and she was unfortunately shot because of that. Thankfully, she was able to be saved, and her message spread very far and very wide. I did just recently finish reading that book, and that is one of my, to wrap it up, one of my favorite books when it comes to journalism and fighting for what's right, and seeing what can happen when misinformation is spread in a community.
Gary, Beth,
thank you, Christy.
Any of the others? What were your inspirations, ladies?
I can jump in. Yeah, I'm
Mara.
embarrassed that I don't have a book I can I can point to, but I love to read, and I just I don't know, there's just so many. I mean, I wasn't a journalism major, and so I don't know that I've read a lot of like journalism books, but I love history and I love current events. So I I mean, for me, I just finished Alexei Navalny's Patriot, and he, of course, is the Russian opposition leader who functions, a lot of investigative kind of journalism with an activist bent in Russia. I mean, that was an amazing book, but I think I would just advocate for reading far and wide. I can't give a particular title. Sorry.
No, that's fun. That's great. Beth or Terry?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there's some really popular books over the years by Catherine Graham and Ben Bradley, who both separate books, but who were both at the Washington Post and involved in covering Watergate. I think those are considered kind of iconic in the field, and they are good. I do have both of those, but the one I would tell you might really enjoy is one I'm reading right now, and it's The Night of the Gun, and it's by David Carr. He was a journalist at the New York Times who unfortunately passed away kind of suddenly a few years back. And David covered the media, but The Night of the Gun is really my favorite thing for reading is memoirs. And it's really his personal story of addiction and redemption, and then a lot of the industry mixed in as well. And I just think it really helps humanize a guy who became an incredibly successful journalist at, one of the most respected outlets. And it's just a really raw and well done story. David was an excellent writer. I enjoyed his work, and I think the book is great too. So something to a little on the grittier side, but definitely worth reading.
Excellent.
And Terry, do you have anything for us?
Yes, I do. My favorite book was by Anne Garrels. She wrote Naked in Baghdad, and she was an NPR reporter. She was reporting and having to put her little antenna outside her hotel window, and the military came to her hotel room because they knew what she was doing. And so she took off all her clothes, and then, of course, they wouldn't come in. So it's really a good book. I would highly recommend it.
Excellent.
Sticking your neck out for journalism. Holy cow. By the way, for anybody that is interested in asking a question, this is time for you to raise your hand. Because of Zoom, we have the capability to do that electronically. So whether you're on a phone, on an iPad, whether you're on a laptop, look for the little icon that allows reactions. And when you click on react, it'll give you the hands up. Please raise your hand and we'll call on you in order. I see we already have somebody. Bonnie Edith's got a question. Bonnie, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is from Mara. I am upset with Florida Today. I'm a faithful subscriber, but last week, Mr. Garcia announced that there will be no letters to the editor page anymore. And I'm totally jealous of Beth's conversations that she's having. He said they're going to put out a question that we can answer. So the first one is about having SpaceX here. I couldn't care less. I want to talk about what I want to talk about and not what I'm being asked. So I am begging. I want the paper to respond to us. I've written to him. I'm getting no response. I mean, I'm really upset about it. I want it to be there for all of us. And I have a feeling it's a very difficult community that you have to deal with. And that's why this is happening. But we're important too.
No, I hear you, and I appreciate the feedback. We've been struggling to get the quantity of letters to fill those pages. We had a limit, and I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like, you could only write one letter over, was it a month or two in a month or something like that, and so we were hearing from the same voices over and over. So we were trying to think of, creative ways to encourage, more people to engage. We have not. I think he worded this. I hope it was clear, but we're not completely doing away with letters to the editor, but we're not making it a standard like every week. We're hoping to compile enough that we can have a real kind of exchange and have different voices in there. The polling is an experiment to try to put things out there. We did one on the homeless, and we got a just really robust collection of viewpoints and ideas. And so I thought that was really successful. I think our one on moving NASA to Brevard hasn't really been. And honestly, the one we have coming, I think we're the one this Sunday, I believe, is related to DEI in schools and education. So we're trying out different topics and hoping that encourages it. So so I welcome the feedback. Nothing is permanent. We're experimenting, but one of the ways that we wanted to expand the number of people. We were just having to repeatedly tell people, no, we just published a letter from you like 2 weeks ago. You're, within the thing, and we just weren't having the quantity that we hoped for. We do see more robust engagement online, like similar to maybe what, Beth sees on comment pages, on social and stuff like that. But it's been a struggle for us with the printed letters to the editor.
I wonder if any of our other panelists would like to pick that up, the advantages versus the risk of, and by the way, I apologize for the sound of our parrots in the background. This is something we normally didn't do when I was hosting, and we've let our birds out.
I kind of sprung that on Phil tonight, so thank you.
Sorry about that. The birds are wanting to talk too. Bottom line, though, is any of our other panelists would like to talk about the risks versus benefits of letters to the editor, that sort of thing.
It's only 100 words that were allowed. So you can't really get into an argument.
Yeah, it wasn't the argument. There's no ulterior motive. It wasn't about arguments or things like that, but it was just becoming sort of, we just felt like it was just kind of the same people every time. But I understand, I hear you, and you're hardly alone in expressing this. And, it's kind of a work in progress as John Torres, and I kind of try to figure out the best way to encourage engagement, on a variety and encourage discussion. We had weeks where it was all, just like all anti-Trump and all very national, and we weren't seeing stuff on local, and we're a local paper. And then we had, and not that we, that's okay, but we want to kind of be able to give people a greater breadth of stuff. And we've just been struggling with that. So we're looking for ways forward, and thought we saw how successful the homeless question was, and how that got such a diverse responses and all across the board, but really thoughtful. And we thought maybe this will work, but the NASA one didn't, so we're seeing, we're playing it, but the feedback's good. I mean, keep the feedback coming because, as we adjust things, that's helpful.
And Mara, I know that you,
Phil, I was just going to mention that I think Beth also looked like she was going to say something.
Right. There we go. Yeah, I was going to say, I know that you accept guest columns as well. If somebody has something that's just eating them and they really want it to be covered, they can always write you a guest column and send it to you. And I know you publish stuff like that all the time. Beth, please take the floor if you got something on this.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, except I was just going to say it's just a reality right now at a small organization. I don't have enough resources to have an opinion editor and have a section devoted to opinion. And I will say that it is not unusual to hear from the same voices over and over again in our comments section. I'm hearing that from a bunch of editors. We started this collaboration here in like Orange, Seminole, Osceola counties. There might be somebody from Florida today in there too. But anyway, I know so we are doing a kind of a joint project on homelessness and the way this law banning camping is being enforced or not enforced. And yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge there's a lot of challenges there. But I know in the past, those sections have been popular, and I have been asked many times to accept like guest columns and that sort of thing at The Voice, which previous editors did that, but I fear, the resources it would take to vet them. So I've been holding off on that.
Again, if anybody else has any questions or comments, we prefer people to ask questions of our panel. We're asking you to please go to the React button and click on that, and then click the little thingy where it has you raising your hand. So raise your hand and we'll call on you. We have somebody that's been waiting patiently here. Jan, you've got the floor. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question is for everyone, and this world seems so fractured. It's like people get sectionalized and they don't interact. And maybe it's because I'm an old person or an older person, but stop laughing, Phil. How do we reach and or incorporate different age levels together? It's like I feel as if there's like a very strong feeling of direction from one group of people, but we're not reaching a younger audience. And I don't know what we can do to incorporate them. And I feel as if it's fractured everything. And it's not just, Republicans versus Democrats. It's age levels and it's income levels. And what do we do to try to homogenize this back a little bit? Because when you're communicating, if you don't structure your message to the right audience, then you're not going to reach them. And I'm really not sure what we can do to overcome that. That's my question.
And by the way, for transparency, if everybody was wondering, I wasn't laughing at Jan. She's my sister. And so, yes, of course, we're all working our way down the road of life together. And everyone on this.
It still doesn't give you the license, big brother or younger brother.
Anyway, excuse me, Jan. So who on our panel would like to address Jan's question?
Christy.
Hi, I was just trying to figure out how to do the little raise hand thing. Okay, so when it comes to, you said trying to reach out to a younger age group, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's all on social media. And a lot of people are on TikTok, they're on Instagram, and that's just what they pay attention to the most, it seems like. And what we have been able to see some people do locally, I know, I'm not sure if you've met Paul Lyle, that was recently a little bit active. He's done a lot of things recently with us in the community. He takes videos from our different rallies and marches and sign waves, and also a lot of his own information. And he will post it on TikTok, and he has a TikTok account with a lot of followers. And so he's been able to get a lot of engagement and a lot of interest from people on there. So it really is just about taking the time to make those pages online and consistently post. And social media is tricky because you really have to find out what is engaging other people. There's always different trends, and when it comes to the younger generation, I've seen that, I hate to say this, but typically their what's the word I'm looking for? Their attention spans are very short. So, we try to do things that are like short and sweet and to the point, and something that grabs their attention and informs them in a way where they can just look at it, kind of like the reels, how the reels are so popular. They're like, oh, that was funny, or that was cool. Now I'm ready for the next. And they scroll and they scroll. So getting those tidbits of information out there on the right sites, I feel like could be helpful. Also, maybe working more with people in the local community colleges. That's something that I was interested in doing. And I will be signing up for more community college classes soon. And that's something that I've been interested in, seeing what I can do in the local colleges. I know that I have a friend that went to school locally, and he told me that they did have different groups, but there wasn't much of them going out and being too active. But it is the information, right, is the goal, right? Is the spreading of the information to them.
If that's what I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, if you're talking about short messages that have to be attention getting and like quick, how do you funnel information into something that's that short and that sweet? And I mean, do they really care about the information, or do they only care about the pizzazz? And I mean, how do you meld those two things together? And to me, that's like, I mean, I'm sure you have to be a very gifted individual to be able to do that. And in a lot of ways, it's just totally refocusing how we approach the presentation of information. And
I completely agree.
You're talking about blending entertainment and information and education and inspiration, activation, all into,
shock,
15
it's like shock
seconds.
value.
Yeah, a
shock
meme
value.
or something like that. Memes are very powerful.
It is. And so, we really shouldn't have to bring shock value or trendy or poppy things to get people interested in the information that's going to help them. This is all information that's just going to help them. Yeah, it's aggravating that we do have to incorporate those things into spreading messages now for the younger generation, but that is what our challenge is at this point. And I would suggest, and I had a friend that ran a local business too that was asking me how they could get more local engagement. And I told them, I said, the reels, and the shorter videos. And if you would like to talk to me further about maybe us teaming up on being able to find something that we can do online, maybe I could help you start a social media page together, and we could find little ideas to try to get the information out there. As far as the second question, knowing who will be interested or not, we'll never know who's going to be interested in what we're trying to say. On social media, you never know who's going to click on what, but there are certain things you can do to at least try to get that message out and to have it appear a little bit more interesting to that younger demographic. So they're more likely to click and read. And I would say that if I have a piece of information, like I say, I do try to edit it down to the essential pieces so they can see those essential pieces, at least,
I'm
Thank
sure
you,
our other
Christy.
panelists.
I was going to say, can I ask a question of the editors and the fact of digital versus paper and how different those two are in your audiences? Because to Christy's point, that's all digital, and there's a whole different audience for that. But I've been struggling because I'm sure the paper, the actual physical paper product has been lessening over the years. But how is your message different? Do you cater to a different audience?
I mean, we really think at Florida Today, we really think of ourselves as digital, and we do have the paper, of course. But it's, I mean, all of our conversations are digital first. There's a lot that we do that probably never makes it in the paper, and so maybe that's the kind of different audience level where, we'll kind of think of a story as much more digital, just digital friendly, that we think our print audience isn't going to be interested, or it's moving too quickly. Our deadlines are ridiculously early, so by the time you read it, it'd be later. So you know, that's so we really have made that transition to digital, but and I think that does give us some opportunities, particularly to reach other people. And, you know, and I think it's taking advantage of things. I mean, even as we see with the news that's been happening with the federal government and the cuts there. I mean, they're affecting, you know, probationary employees. Those tend to be younger people. And I think those are opportunities as we look at sources and who we're talking to and the kind of stories we're telling to make sure that we're, you know, taking advantage of or just tapping into some of those where there is interest. And hopefully, you know, that'll lead them to other stories that we've done. But it's a challenge.
Beth, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, all of the legacy papers who may still have a print product or started out as print really do think of themselves as digital first and truly do operate that way. We've had to make that evolution over the last, you know, 20 years. And they really are there. The newspaper, in some instances, is still printed, but it probably carries just a fraction of what's being produced on the website. Now, at the Winter Park Voice, we are purely just digital. We're a website with an emailed newsletter, and that way we can notify folks who do sign up with their email address that a new story is out. Otherwise, you can just come to the site. We also have a Facebook page. I have definitely wanted to start a TikTok and an Instagram for The Voice, and that's something that's on my list. I think there are a lot of younger people in Winter Park who we could reach that way. I gotta tell you, it is intimidating. I've seen a lot of media outlets start TikToks that are just kind of duds because they come off as like really inauthentic and contrived, or they're just not consistent enough. And so I've been a little wary before stepping into that space with the Voice brand, because I really have tried to give some thought to how I want to do that. But I think it's absolutely necessary in order to grow our audience. So, you know, that's something on my list, and definitely a goal that I have. I would say when it comes to social and like the TikToks that do well, a lot of times it's just a person with a camera in front of their face telling a compelling story. There really isn't always a lot of flash to it. And sometimes they're even a little longer, maybe a few minutes. On TikTok, it can be longer. So, and I think that Insta Reels are going longer too now. So you know, it's not always flash. To me, it's more like the organic story and the authentic story, and something that they aren't necessarily finding somewhere else. That's sort of just my take. But yeah, like Christy's right. Like that's definitely where the younger audiences are. And I don't see a point of getting back to a place where we're reaching all the audience on the same platform all the time. I think what I'm seeing right now is they are going to stay fragmented, but the content doesn't have to be fragmented. The content can be pushed appropriately to the different platforms.
Excellent.
And Terry,
thank you, Beth.
Terry Wright is WFIT is on the campus at Florida Tech, and you've been evolving with the old saying, media is the message. You know, you've been evolving as the technology has evolved. You know, your target audience is similar yet evolving as well. What's going on at Florida Tech?
Well, sadly, it's because we are a radio station and music changes. And just as I said earlier about how how we get our news changed has changed, so has how kids get music. They don't listen to the radio. Everybody has their playlists and their Spotify, and so it's tough. We do have a social media presence, but as far as reaching them over the airwaves, probably not going to happen.
Well,
Thank you,
you very
Terry.
much. And by the way, Terry, we want to thank you for your support over the years. You've been doing this for more than a quarter of a century at WFIT, and wow, what an incredible impact you've had as a person, and having had the pleasure of doing many Coastal Connections interviews with you over the years with many fantastic guests. And again, we really never really know who's listening and how people monitor that. But wow, have you done a phenomenal job. I just have to say thank you. We do, as Daniel's about to say, Shannon has her hand up. So Shannon, you got a question?
Right. Before we go there, though, let me just interject
Yeah.
here for a moment that we do have the chat going as well. And Michael had some comments. So feel free to put some chats in there if you like. And I would encourage the group to go ahead and read those chats. So I'm sorry, Shannon, you're up.
Well, I apologize to the group because I came in late, but I did have a question to ask the panel because I think what we notice nationally relative to local is that a lot of everything that's local and national are all always together and even global now. And I was what I see missing, because I do participate, and I know Dan can speak to this for West Melbourne and others of you too, is the lack of outreach from the media. And maybe it requires the municipalities to reach out back to the media, but there seems to be a disconnect. In the old days, we used to have our local reporter or our local coverage of any of the matters impacting the municipalities. And as we know in Brevard, at least, we've got the 16 municipalities. And what I see an opportunity, I'm going to talk about it positively, is for there to be an engagement of some sort. I'm not sure the format, but to somehow have more awareness of what is going on in municipalities and somehow kind of providing some a common set of issues or whatever that we're talking about it to engage us. And maybe that would cross party lines, cross interest lines, cross age lines, cross gender lines, and so forth. When you look at the national media coverage, you'll see them honing in on, local town halls, or, they'll get coverage from people on the street. And recently they had an interview with 4 federal workers. This was on MSNBC. And you see there's an outreach to the local communities or the local group that's impacted. And that's where I see the promise for the media to maybe engage with the communities, or maybe you all have some suggestions on how the communities can be reaching out to media outlets. I appreciate Christy's note about social media, but I think it's having that presence, that having the reporters from Florida Today used to really impact us, and we could reach out to the reporters for coverage on the municipalities and so forth. So I hope I'm probably generalizing here too much, but I see the disconnect between local and national and global, I guess, in this case. And I was wondering if there's any way to maybe engage with the local communities a little bit more than has taken place.
So who would like to pick that one up? Who on our panel would like to address what you were saying?
I mean, I can jump in, at least start it off. I mean, no, I agree. I wish that we could engage more. Our staff is just so much smaller, and we have 2 people that cover the entire county, and that also includes county government and growth and development issues. So the days of us being able to be, focus on each municipality are just gone. But we do have, like 2 reporters that are available and are looking for stories and are watching. They often watch the meetings after the fact, and they go through agendas. If you're seeing something, if you're hearing something, we always welcome tips and heads up on that. If we can get ahead of it, we are able to pivot and get people out to meetings. But it's that's one of the challenges. It's just not having enough people. So we definitely, other eyes on the ground and ideas are welcome.
Any of our other panelists like to answer that? By the way, I have to say, I think I've mentioned this to you before, Mara, and that is, I've been over the years, because of my involvement with the SCP, I've been to many meetings in various municipalities and many county meetings, that sort of thing. And I'll notice that there's Dave Berman or Tyler or somebody else that's there covering the event with me. And I'll walk away, think, no, I have a pretty good handle on what happened at that meeting. And then I read the article in the paper the next day and I go, holy cow, I had no idea. I mean, they bring insight and context to the topic that I didn't have. I sat there, watched the meeting. I watched it live. I watched each of the people do their thing, and I was there the whole damn time. And I still didn't understand some of the fine points of what was going on in the background. And it's like, wow, it really it like hits you in the head, saying, God, the truth is, having good journalism, it really does fill in the blanks, the puzzle pieces that are all floating around. We think we understand reality and the big picture, but getting the context and background from great journalists is so valuable, and I am forever thankful. So please take it back to your team, how much we appreciate what they do and how much they've expanded the quality of our community. Rachel Maddow on MSNBC years ago did a really important segment. She still does them, about the importance of local journalism and how it actually towns that lose their local paper have their taxes go up because their insurance, the city's insurance costs go up because insurance companies and bond companies understand that they're more likely to have corruption in a community that doesn't have oversight from local media, local journalism. And so, I mean, in that regard, hey, paying for your paper is cheaper than paying for higher taxes, right?
Yeah, Phil, if I could just jump in,
yes,
I think people have gotten the message over the years that if they don't contribute and buy tickets or give donations, that the local arts community will disappear. And I think the journalism industry has not done a good job of communicating that very same message. And it's so, so true. If you do not contribute, if you do not buy the product, it will disappear. I mean, people will not volunteer to work for us for free. I have to pay freelancers for every story. So, Maura's got to pay a huge payroll. I mean, it's just, and that what you can pay absolutely correlates to the quality of the person you get, the quality of the skill that you get. So, this is a situation where, if you don't want your local ballet or your local orchestra to disappear and you participate, it's very, very much the same thing.
It's a lesson everyone should learn. It's like buy local, right? You want good local businesses, you have to support your local businesses by paying for the service. By the way, this is a quick reminder, and that is those of you who would like to ask questions, this is a rare gift to be able to talk to four highly skilled people, journalists, media experts, and you don't get a chance to do this every day. If you want to ask a question, look for the little react button. It's got a little heart, at least in mine, but I believe it's on the phone, on iPads, and on the computer, on a laptop. Hit the little react button. It'll open up a little window. You hit the raise hand, and boom, your hand is up. And Christy's got her hand raised. So, Christy, you've got it. Uh-oh. It looks like we need to unmute. There you go.
Okay, so firstly, I would like to add that I do very much agree with Beth that when it comes to reaching a younger audience on social media, that no, not all content needs to be super lightning quick, and it does not all need to be flashy. There are several different things that go into what grabs a younger person's attention on social media. Another point that Beth pointed out was that people can tell if a story is genuinely told. Like she said, if they're seeing something that is disingenuous and something that is more attention seeking, people can tell. And as she also mentioned, a lot of the reporters and the younger people that are on TikTok and on social media, they have their microphones and they have their stories. And as I added earlier, it's the stories, they just have it chopped down a little bit, enough to just get it through in a smaller video. Whereas to where in earlier generations, we would read the whole article, we can find ways to take it down a little bit, make it a more bite-sized, and genuine videos really connecting to people is a great idea for getting that out there. And secondly, I wanted to answer Shannon's question, which was, I believe, how can we get the community together? Is that the question, most? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are several different ways to gather the community, a few of which I feel like I did touch on in my speech. Working with Awake Brevard has been a pleasure because the main focus of Awake Brevard when we started the group was that we wanted visibility. We know our local chapters. We have all of our friends, right? Like, we do have things that we do in small groups, but what can we do to bring that out into the community? What can we do to really bring all of this forward and have bigger events where dozens or hundreds of people can show up and interact? And I would definitely say through rallies. Okay, we've got marches, or, you know, we call them marches, but still, you know, just like rallies where we gather together. Also where we do our speeches at our rallies, where we have, just like the wonderful panelists we have today, you know, a handful of people that speak on their specific set of skills and information in the community. And, you know, just those gatherings I've seen personally how much we've been able to reach out to people because of those public gatherings. We've done them inside, we've done them outside. I know there are different things that the UU does, which is the banned book library. They have all different kinds of gatherings and activities that they do, and crafts and all different kinds of things. So yeah, I do feel like finding local groups that you're seeing that are doing things out in the community, follow their pages and try to show up to these local events, try to meet new people, you know, try to hear what's going on and learn whatever you can. Definitely, I would say try to engage with groups that are being more visible in the community and try to attend those things.
And while I've got you, Christy, if you and Mara could please type in the chat what your favorite book, your book that we were talking about earlier, is. Bonnie Eda was asking if everybody would type that in so that she could have that as a reference. For those of you that would like to kind of use this as a reading reference, call it our own little book club, you can always take a picture of what's going on the chat and save that for later. Michael, you've had your hand raised, and it's your opportunity to ask your question. You have the floor.
I just wanted to ask a question about Blue Sky. I know a number of the speakers here have talked about how they're online and they have some different channels that they interact with. I just wanted to know if any of them have been keeping up with the significant move of users to Blue Sky, the exodus off of X, and whether or not they have any plans to move on to Blue Sky. From my quick search, none of them seem to be there. But I just wanted to see if anyone was thinking about that. I know things move fast, and unfortunately, once you get up these different social networks, then they either become irrelevant or they disappear right by the time you've sort of made the investment to get hooked into them. But yeah, things move quickly, but there is a lot going on Blue Sky right now.
It looks like Christy's ready to jump on that one. You've got it.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a wonderful question. I was actually hoping that somebody was going to bring up Blue Sky today. Actually, you can find me on Blue Sky under the tag name of Christy Boo. You can find me there. A lot of my friends, I have seen actually a pretty big migration from Facebook to Blue Sky. I do still see a lot of my friends that are doing both. A handful of them who are staying on Blue Sky and will not be returning to Facebook due to the changes on that platform that they're not happy with. So yes, definitely making sure that we are on the same platforms as other people so we can stay connected is important. For sure.
Anybody else want to talk about Blue Sky? the any of our panelists?
I'm on Blue Sky, but I haven't posted anything yet. But I think I have just 2 followers. But it's mbellaby.b. Yeah, it's mbella. I haven't explored it very much at all, though. So, but I am there.
Terry, have you tried that? I know I keep seeing
No.
I was going to say I keep seeing folks talk about Blue Sky. I generally personally don't do social media, but the essence is I know an awful lot of people rely on it. They rely on X and of course Twitter was foundational for a lot of people. That's for the news flows, coming from the media would be very heavy on Twitter. When Musk bought them out and really bent the organization to his will and drove it. I'm going to say drove it into the dirt, if I might say that. And everybody said, "Holy cow! I don't want to be here anymore." A lot of people are saying that about Substack, the places that used to have pretty lively and interesting discussion and a lot of good news flow and stuff that are now driven. They've gone way off the road. They're in the ditch. They're stuck in the ditch, and they're probably not coming out of it. People don't want to be stuck in the ditch with these feeds, and so they are looking for Blue Sky. By the way, if anybody wants to talk more about how Blue Sky works, is it the same? Does it work the same as Twitter used to? Does it feel like that? Is it functionally the same way as Twitter was? Christy, you got it.
Thank you so much. So Blue Sky, I feel like is very similar to Facebook. It is very easy to navigate. I go on there and it was very easy to pick a profile picture, to put a background picture, just like Facebook has your profile and then your background. And it is extremely easy. It actually even looks with the colors and the layout, actually even looks a little bit similar to Facebook. Like I said, very easy to navigate, and I would advise anybody to try Blue Sky. And a lot of people are migrating over there because we are sick and tired of people not providing the inclusivity that we deserve, especially in the LGBTQIA community. So, I would implore anybody to try it out. Super easy to use platform.
Thank you, Christy. I'm going to jump in here because we are reaching the bottom of the hour here, and I know that Shannon had a follow-up, I believe.
I think one of the concerns I've got is that we're talking about groups like the rallies and the Christie. I appreciate where you're coming from on that. But what worries me is, in my opinion, we need a catalyst, and the media has done this in the past, where within the I'm suggesting within the municipalities, because in my observation, everything is local first, and then you can go on up to the national issues, talk those. But I think that we still need focus groups to cross, the diverse members of our communities together so that we can start talking with each other. If we continue to, separate ourselves, into our preferred blue groups or whatever group it is, we're still not having that dialogue that promotes understanding and opportunities for common ground. And I think that's something that, interestingly, the media has helped us with in the past. And that's where I was coming from with some of my earlier thoughts. They maybe not very well articulated, but I think that we need some cross sort of diverse groups exchanging viewpoints and having respectful dialogue. And that usually takes place in the groups of like 15 to 20 people. And the media has helped with that. You'll see national coverage of groups like that. Well, they'll have a sit down at a conference table or whatever, viewpoints, and they'll start exchanging ideas. I just think we need that in the country right now. And if we continue to separate ourselves, we're not coming together.
Thank you, Shannon. I would like to remind everyone that we want to get in here before we hit the bottom of the hour are 2 action items that we had talked about with each of the panelists. If we could kind of migrate to that here and kind of wrap things up, if that's okay. Because Christy, I saw you did have your hand up, so I didn't know if you wanted to respond to the Shannon, or if you're ready to talk about your 2 action items.
Okay, I can do both really quickly if you'd like.
Great.
Okay, so as a response to Shannon, I would say that I definitely understand that it's very important for us as a community to come together, even especially with opposing viewpoints, so we can all talk and discuss more. Looking into your local chapters, we actually do have a lot of local groups that do have meetings that you can look into where you can discuss a lot of these things. Also, online forums, you might be able to find a lot more diversity if you go online, and there are different groups that you can join there and have more active discussions. Thank you so much for your concern, and I do agree that that is very important for the community. And going forward for the action items, I'll bring up my notes here. Action item. Okay.
We can give you a minute to collect, and if somebody else wanted to jump in, that's fine too.
I would say to reach out and to make new friends. Reach out and really try to meet new people. That's number one. And like I just said, making meetings, attending rallies, and having open topics of conversations.
So you're not alone.
Yes, absolutely. Reach out, talk to new people, have these conversations, you know, go to a new meeting, try out new things, really get out in the community as best you can. Ask those questions. That's what's really helped me, you know.
Great. Thank you,
Yes.
Christy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and I'll go right on top of that. And as Chrissy said, get out and meet new people. WFIT has their fund drive March 22nd through the 30th, so come and answer phones. You'll learn all about the radio station and the behind the scenes, and maybe you could start a new career in broadcasting.
So how do they sign up for that, Terry?
On the website, there's a link, wfit.org.
Excellent.
And my other action item would be to support local journalism any way you can.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry.
By the way, I can say from personal experience, doing those fund drives is a lot of fun. You really, really get to know people. It's amazing, the people that call in, some of the conversations you'll have. It is mind-blowing. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Phil.
All right. Beth or Mara?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, I hate to sound like a broken record here because folks have kind of said the same thing, but absolutely support your local journalists, you know, buy a subscription to Florida Today, sign up for other outlets, maybe give to the Institute for Nonprofit News, which supports hyperlocals all over the country. You know, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. And anybody here is welcome to email me and get more specifics. Also, I would just say too, to speak up, right? Like, I think during the Trump years, there's been some hesitancy, people not wanting to fight, people wanting to be polite, people not wanting to make things more divisive than necessary, which is all good. And I certainly would never advocate for arguing or anything like that. But I know like I said, I've taken a more active approach in our comments section. I think we need to speak up when someone's misstating a fact or citing a bad source. You can gently point out the right thing without being obnoxious about it. And that's kind of a little, just a small thing you can do in daily life, whether it's an in-person interaction or online or what have you.
Thank you, Beth. And we started with Mara, and we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, well, like everyone said, I'd say subscribe to Florida Today, support local journalism. That's so important, and we depend on that to pay our salaries and to do what we do. And then my second one would be, to read a cross section of stories, and to share them, to talk about them. We as a business, which we are, we pay attention to page views, and I'd love it if the new restaurant didn't always top the page view thing. So if we're writing about something at the county commission or local government or political issues, read them and share them. That helps us. That helps boost it. It helps more people see it. That's how the algorithms work. So that would be my second ask. And thank you very much for this opportunity tonight.
Well,
And don't
thank
forget to
you.
buy a book from your favorite journalist. I highly recommend that. This is something that I think is a topic that people need to learn more about, what journalism is and why it is so important. The fourth estate is so important to our democracy. If we lose journalism, if we lose our media, we will lose our democracy. That is the bottom line here. Absolutely. Back
I
to
have
you.
asked everyone to come off of mute and give you guys applause here. So
Woohoo!
thank you very much.
Yay!
Appreciate this.
Thank
time. And that
you.
pretty much concludes our program for challenges to journalism, truth, media, and democracy. And again, thank you to the panelists tonight, and to on behalf of all of the folks at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, we greatly appreciate what you do for this community. So thank you so much. And that kind of concludes our evening event. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
All right.
program.
Thank you all.
All right.